A few months after these decrees, Matthias and his sons Judah, John, Simon, Eleazar, and Jonathan joined the congregation of Modian in the local synagogue when a representative of the king arrived in town. The representative, who went unnamed in the sources, came to announce that they were no longer allowed to offer prayers and offerings to Jehovah. Instead, he told them, in no uncertain terms, they needed to offer thanks and prayers up to the Greek gods, and Modian's people were divided. None were Hellenists, but some, knowing what the penalty of refusal would be, thought that God would forgive them for their fear and stepped up and agreed to the king's command. Matthias, disbelieving some of his own friends would betray their God and religion, grew enraged. He killed them and the king's representative, fleeing the synagogue with his sons into the surrounding countryside. This killing of the official brought down even harsher laws upon the Jews. They were commanded to eat pork, stop circumcision, work on the Sabbath, and within Jerusalem a garrison was stationed, tasked with hunting down Matthias and his sons. The priest and his children hid in the mountains, soon joined by others who grew tired of the oppression they suffered under Antiochus's reign. Men brought their wives and children, even their pets, into the wilderness to follow Matthias and his sons in their rebellion. Their numbers grew until they became a small army. Matthias, being too old to lead men into battle, himself appointed his son, Judah, to the position of military commander, and he quickly earned the nickname Maccabees, meaning the hammer from the Greeks, due to his ferocity in battle and how devastating his raids were against them. Judah and his 4 brothers declared themselves princes of Judea, claiming the titles based on their descent from Kings David and Solomon through Solomon his daughter Basemath, who married Ahimaaz, son of Zealots. In taking royal titles, they set themselves as monarchs against Antiochus, and effectively declared war against the empire, unable to strike out against the Greek armies in open combat. Judah and his brothers, chief among them being Simon, known as Simon the Wise for his learning and knowledge of Torah law, attacked isolated patrols, ambushing them and killing every soldier they could. They attacked garrisons in local villages, and they also targeted Hellenistic Jews. They killed any who wouldn't follow traditional Judaism, believing that accommodation could never work. They forced boys to be circumcised and destroyed any altars they found to Greek gods. Using speed and mobility to their advantage, the Maccabean forces, despite being poorly equipped compared to their Greek counterparts, scored several victories in ambushes and raids. The first big test for Judah and his brothers came at the Battle of the Ascent of Lebanon. The sons of Matthias, having led their followers into the borderlands between Judea and Samaria, settled down to celebrate and honor the Sabbath, according to customs at the time. Now called the oral law in modern-day Orthodox Judaism, no work of any kind could be carried out on the Sabbath, not even the cooking of meals which needed to be prepared the day prior. The Greeks, under the command of an officer of Samaritan background named Apple, learned of their whereabouts by some unknown means, and swiftly marched out of his fort in Samaria to catch the rebels off guard. This they managed to do, coming down upon them in the middle of the night. Greek and Samaritan soldiers butchered several before Judah was able to rally a defense. In the chaos that followed, Maccabeus found Apollonius, and the two fought in single combat, Judah emerging the victor, cutting down many more of the officer's friends until, finally, the Maccabeans were able to drive back the enemy, but not without dozens of lives lost. After the battle, Judah took Apollonius' sword for his own, it being made of better material, and divided the spoils among his men. A few months after Apollonius' defeat, Matthias passed away, dying of old age. Judah stepped up and became the official leader of the rebellion, wasting no time in leading more attacks. These attacks drew the attention of Saran, a Syrian prince in the service of Antiochus. Not much is known of Saran save his rank and ethnic background, but he hated the Maccabees with a passion, believing they were rebelling for ridiculous and childish reasons, and that his king deserved more worship than any god they believed in. Gathering an army behind him, the Syrian prince proclaimed that he would gain glory and renown when he killed Judah and his brothers. Saran marched into Judea and met the Maccabees near the mountain of Beth Horon, Judah's army suddenly rushing down upon the Syrians in a lightning-quick strike that took Saran by surprise. In the battle that followed, known as the Battle of Beth Horon, Saran and 80% of his men died, the rest retreating back into Syria. This battle cemented Judah's name throughout Seleucid lands and gave the traditionalist Jews hope of total victory. The news of Beth Horon spread fast, and soon reached Antiochus, at his capital in Babylon. Like one would expect, the king wasn't particularly pleased about this defeat, the latest in a string of defeats. Opening his treasury, Antiochus gave each soldier in his army a year's pay in an effort to boost morale and crush the Judean rebels for good. He selected 2 trusted generals and friends, Gorgias and Nicanor, to lead a fresh army to defeat and kill the sons of Matthias. But they failed. Gorgias and Nicanor were defeated at the Battle of Emmaus and driven back across the border to Syria. The following battle, the Battle of Beth-zur, saw the Maccabees gain their greatest victory against the Greeks. This victory, coupled with the death of Antiochus in Persia around the same time, compelled the Seleucid forces to withdraw from Judea altogether. Judah and his brothers entered Jerusalem, hailed as heroes and liberators, being given a welcoming fit for the descendants of David. The first act Judah carried out was the cleansing of the temple and re-establishing the Aaronic line as high priests. He executed Menelaus and all those who had sided with the king during the war. The taking of Jerusalem, however, did not end Greek rule over Judea. Many Jews, especially those who were followers of Hellenistic Judaism or were of Greek descent, still felt loyal to the Seleucids, and not without cause feared that if Judea made a clean break with the empire, Judah would have them killed for simply believing in a different kind of Judaism than he did. Judah did his best to discuss the independence of Judea with the new king, Antiochus V, but things broke down when the Greek king refused to even consider Judea becoming its own kingdom, and so the war continued on. Moderates, having supported the Maccabean brothers up until then, moved to the Greek side, creating not just a war for independence, but now a true civil war. War raged until the Battle of Elassay in 160 BC, when Judah and Simon the Wise came up against the forces of Maccabees, a Seleucid general of mixed Greek-Syrian descent, and close friend of Antiochus V. The battle took place near the modern Palestinian city of Ramallah. The Greek-Syrian forces numbered in the thousands, the Judeans only 800. Despite this, Judah and Simon led their warriors down to face their enemies. Maccabees, commanding the army from the front, allowed the Judeans to attack, letting the battle rage for hours. Then, suddenly, he called a retreat and acted panicked, giving the impression he thought, somehow, he was losing the fight, and he fled back towards the Judean mountains with his men. Judah, so smart, so battle-savvy in other instances, made a fatal error in choosing to follow the general. The Judean prince, along with hundreds of his warriors, chased down the Greeks and Syrians only to be surrounded by them. Judah and many others were killed, while Simon and Jonathan escaped with the rest of the army. In the days following Elassay, Simon reached out to Maccabees and asked permission to retrieve Judah's body from the battlefield. In years prior, their younger brother, Eleazar, died in battle, and they were never able to recover his body. Simon didn't want the same to happen to Judah. Maccabees, a man of honor who respected Judah's bravery, agreed. And so Simon and Jonathan returned to the Judean mountain foothills, where they found their brother and carried him away for burial. It would take another 10 years after Judah's death for the Maccabees to win full independence. In 150 BC, the Seleucids accepted defeat and recognized Judea as an independent kingdom. Simon the Wise, by the consent of the elders of Judea, became the first prince of an independent country.